All right, sure, I'll have.
Huh? Not all. Sorry. Yeah. Still all time. Just. So, Tony, son, sandwich off. That's on. Yeah. Yeah, patrol. Yeah. Quite patrol. That's right. Other than seeing around here, we can send up the place we ever really saw it. Right. Ready? So. Yeah. Yeah, we did. Yeah, I'm all set one about a year. Right. So water. Right in place.
I'm yielding for a screenshot. Thanks for doing that.
Oh, right.
Good. Everyone's good.
Hi, Julian. Hello. How are you? Hi, Ashley. Hanging in there.
See you later. Good.
No, Scott is not coming today. Oh, Scott's, I think I'm behind that. Hi, Scott. You're invisible, but we see your name now. We're gonna have to have a fast and furious meeting today. Now, 15 minutes. So don't anybody take it personal. But I'm gonna be abrupt. You probably could be that way. I'm just gonna pretend I'm at work on a construction site, sorry.
Hi, Luke, and everybody. This is Scott. I'm on Zoom.
Scott, I was just mentioning, I don't know if you noticed, but our meeting's gonna be, before we start, I just wanna explain that the meeting's an hour and 15 long because there's a planning meeting right after. So don't take it personal, but I'm gonna be.
Okay.
We'll be like cutting people off and we're gonna like just move on, chop, chop. Where is the plan?
Okay.
Here,
Hey,
yeah,
that's fine.
Where's the one?
there's a planning,
Oh, yeah.
planning committee, city council planning committee meeting here at 2:30.
Is that the way they planned it?
Well, it was the same time, so at least that's what approved then.
I didn't plan it, that's all I know, but we're gonna do our best to get through our stuff. And if we have to schedule like, maybe a meeting halfway through the month, next month or something, so be it. Well, we'll try and get through, we have Jeff with us today, Kruger from the water sewer superintendent, is with us today. Thanks for coming, Jeff.
Thanks for inviting me down.
I guess, Sam, are we ready to go? Sure. Maybe we already started that.
The meeting that, yeah, the online thing started.
Hi, Eric.
How are you?
Do we have another new member?
All right, we'll call to order the meeting of the Commission on Conservation of the Environment. October 24th, about 1:20. Roll calls.
Well, I'm not sure if my list of members is complete, but we have Richard here. And you, Darius, same as I thought, so here. Scott's on the phone. Tom.
So it's 100%.
Is present. Is that Ashley?
Ashley is here.
Julian?
Julian is here.
Yeah, yeah. And
Laura is here.
Laura.
And I am here.
And
I
I,
at least appear to be. And we have visiting Jeff Kruger, the City of Binghamton Water Sewer Supervisor. And Councilman Kavanaugh. Yeah. Well, I'm not sure about Hadassah. I haven't heard from her, but we will. Hadassah.
Oh.
We will carry on. Approval of minutes of our September meeting. Do I have a motion? Motion by Julian. Do I have a second? Second by Tom. All in favor of approval of the September meeting minutes?
Aye.
Aye.
Scott says aye.
That's
Do
just-
you abstain if you weren't there, or does it?
You can vote if you want, because the minutes were online.
Okay, then yeah, go with them.
There you go. Unanimous approval. Okay, public comments. Seeing none, we'll move on to previous business. We have the RL 24-162 discussion, vote on recommendations, but if there's no issues, skip over that for the minute so that we can go to the word that I have a hard time pronouncing, toxicology. Reports and their committee, and welcome Jeff. Jeff, if you want to come over and sit right at the table with us for this conversation.
Are we doing the toxicology now?
Yes.
Could I have a point of order? If this comes from the subcommittee, does it come with a motion? For us
Yes.
to approve?
Yes.
Could we just say that?
Actually, it doesn't come from the subcommittee, it comes from the committee.
The
committee
committee is
voted.
separate from the commission. The committee is the,
It's a subcommittee.
yes, of the
Okay.
commission.
Well, I'm just asking, what is the motion? That's all. I'd like to hear it.
Okay,
Okay, the motion is to recommend discontinuing the fluoridation of Binghamton's water supply.
Okay, thanks.
and just for clarification, I do believe the recommendation would go to city council because it's within their power
Absolutely.
to remove it. So it's just a recommendation
To city
to
council,
city.
yes. It's understood, but thanks for the clarification.
Okay, Jeff, can we hear any of your comments and thoughts?
Some of my comments, do your civic duty and absorb some fluoride so we don't have to store it under a mountain in tin can somewhere. Fluoride, it's always been controversial, will always be controversial. Whenever you give birth, the first questions they ask you at the hospital is your water fluoridated? If not, they take steps and give you formula and waters that are fluoridated for the child. So you're taught from the very beginning that it's something good for your teeth. Right, period. Dentists will stick behind this. They will continue to do that. For every study you can prove where it is detrimental, there'll be 1,000 studies that prove it's a positive in life. That's an age-old argument. As the supplier of drinking water, we don't care whether we put it in there or not. It does not change our lives that much. It would be a cost savings to not put it in. It would be a hazardous chemical that we don't have to deal with. So there are issues. Fluoride, what does it do? We have tiled walls in the water plants. The fumes from fluoride will etch the face off of the shiny tiles. It will melt through concrete at full strength. It's some pretty nasty stuff to deal with. We have to keep the day tank that we pump from. We have to keep it sealed so none of the fumes can escape. We have a large blower in the room to keep the airflow going at all times. What are we feeding currently? Our average is about 13 gallons a day. And it's only because our water supply is pretty low as far as what we're putting out every day. We're down to about 4.5, 5 million gallons a day out through the city. So that's why we're only feeding about 13 gallons a day. That's What's my total for the year? My total for the year on fluoride was 4,850 gallons,
So 13 gallons a day and how many gallons of water?
about 4.5 million. So we're talking, New York State has recently reduced the amount of fluoride they're asking for to C as a residual. It went from 1.0 to a 0.7 milligrams per liter. So that is a reduction. It's heading in the right direction. As far as people who are against it. It really becomes community by community will eventually make these decisions for their water systems. Whether you want to go with the science that it's bad, or you want to go with the science that it's more harmful than it is beneficial, that's up to you. But then the healthcare providers will step in and do something different and redirect you towards a fluoridated source of water, towards this, towards that. It's going to be hard to get away from it. So what are you really doing by stopping adding it to the water? Do you really gain a lot?
Yes, protecting the health of the people.
And then you go to the hospital and they're giving you water that's been fluoridated, or they're giving you out of a special jar. And you go somewhere and you're still receiving this fluoridated water, but from different sources.
There are a lot of toxic things that you can get in the hospital. That's one of them.
So-
Okay, so the evidence has become overwhelming in the past 7 years, especially. So you're saying that the studies balance out, that's an obsolete statement. I don't expect
It
you
could be.
to keep up to date on every chemical in the water. But there was a recent federal court decision that took a long time because they studied the judge studied all the research and came to the conclusion that at the current levels, 0.7, it does pose a threat to the IQs of young children, both in the developing womb and if they use water to make formula for the babies. And
All right,
there's a lot of-
We're gonna have to keep this,
there's a lot of, now you're shutting me down.
and I said at the
After
beginning,
1
I
minute,
said at the beginning of the meeting, I am gonna shut people down.
Okay.
Because we're gonna get out of it.
now, there are many,
So if
many
there's a
studies.
specific statement you wanna make.
There are many, many studies that show the IQ effects. And there's one study that also shows that it predisposes the elderly to hip fractures because of loss of bone. So, and those are the two types of effects that are seen at the very low levels. The other levels like fluorosis, you see at like 4 parts per million and above, which is not where
toxic.
we're at. Yeah.
I'd be putting out water that's toxic.
Right, and then there's also the fact that there's so much fluoride now in the diet because you buy soda, or beer or something, it might have been made with fluoridated water or prepared foods that we don't really need to fluoridate.
My question to you is gonna be, what federal judge, what federal court? what
Chen.
state-
Federal court in California, I can send you the decision as well as the case.
You have,
The 80-page decision.
I'm just gonna be honest with you in my thought and opinion on California laws. They're going to be the first to set
It's-
trends on everything.
Well, that's good. Maybe we
I'd
can
like
set
to
a
see it
trend
go
for a change.
somewhere else.
Now, okay,
before
so
it
right
became-
after that
because where's the
decision
EPA on
came
this?
out, right after that decision came out, the town of, it's Yorktown in New York State. They
Yep.
decided to put a pause, not to discontinue, but to put a pause on it for now because of that court decision. But we had Professor Conant come here in August. He gave a lecture for an hour and a half and showed us all the research. And I looked at other research. Julian gave me some research in the other direction. It was all written by dentists and people in the dentist profession. So I'm gonna have to go with the ecotoxicologist and the really
Nah.
very well done, very well funded by NIH and other entities in the federal government. It's pretty solid if you look at it.
Has the EPA made any decision?
The EPA was forced by the court decision to make a move on this because of the Toxic Substances Control Act. Okay, so that decision just came a few weeks ago, so they have time to act on it.
Okay, Tom,
Okay. I don't think from our conversations, that the issue for you is the argument that you're making. It's like if someone tells you that we're not gonna use Florida, if city council said we're not gonna use Florida anymore, you're not gonna resist that, right? Right.
Yes, and I know that it's a
No,
hazard
I-
for the workers.
No, so I think the argument you're making is valid as people may find it or not, is it with the water department? That's why
I'm
I
not
wanted-
making the argument with the water department, I'm making it with you
I'm
two.
not,
So
I'm
I
not
have a-
debating
so I
with
have a
you, I
question.
just wanna finish my statement.
Okay.
here. I just wanted Jeff to come here so he could say yes or no. There's not an official resistance to this idea from your experience in the water department. That's the main thing I wanted to know.
No, and I don't expect
My
him,
question for Jeff is this. The committee votes to recommend to city council stop fluoridating the water. And city council in turn says, okay, we're gonna pass legislation, we're gonna stop fluoridating. How difficult is it to turn it off? And then if it got reversed, how would it be to turn it back on?
Pretty much, it's got the answer right there. We press a button, pump stops.
It's just valves, right?
It's absolutely nothing. There's no boundary for starting and stopping. There's no procedure, nothing. I make sure the lines are drained out. It would take me almost 15 minutes to stop or start from scratch.
So
So,
that's a plus as far as decision making, whatever, that makes it easy as far as, it's not a big deal. Cost wise, are we looking at $25,000 to $35,000 a year?
yeah, it's about $30,000 a year in Florida.
doesn't the state handle that with a grant? Does the city pay for it? I thought
City
it's
pays for all our chemicals.
The water,
including
There's no
Florida.
the
grants
users,
out there
the
for
water
chemicals.
users, the users pay for it.
Okay,
So that's
It's not
all
city
part of it.
taxes.
how much was it again?
30,000 a year.
30,000.
in Florida.
Julian?
Okay, look, Richard certainly interested me in this issue. First place, I am a biologist and obviously an environmentalist to sit here. But I looked into the literature quickly, and I'm certainly not all-knowing, but I looked into the literature quickly, the scientific literature. And as I told you all on base camp, the two most recent studies I could find both showed no effect of fluoride. So, Richard, I don't think it's fair to say the evidence is overwhelming. It's not overwhelming. In fact, it's quite debatable. They found no effect at the level that you're doing. It's long been known that fluoride is beneficial for teeth. And there were comments, I think, from Richard, maybe Dr. Jeanette, was that his name? Sorry. Connett, right. Said that, you know, that it wasn't a problem these days, that the incidence of caries had come way down. But frankly, what these sources that were cited were European or New Zealand places that have a health system, a public health system, which we don't. And frankly, I think it's well documented that our public health system is one of the poorest among the rich countries. And so my worry is that if we stop fluoridating, that we deny sort of the poorer people, and particularly, I think we would deny maybe some elderly people too, but we would deny them this protection that they get for their teeth, which has been well documented. And we don't have a system. In England, I know that they actually fluoridate in the schools, you know, that's way, but we don't do that here. And so my feeling is we should not even recommend that we abolish the fluoridization. And we might ask sort of one other issue, just I said I'm not an authority on the health issues, but there are people who are better at that than we are. And I meant generally I mean, people like I actually talked to the Director of Environmental Health, the Broome County Director. He was actually pretty unknowing about the any current issues with it. And I sent him some references, but in any case, I think it is health officials that should be consulted. So I don't think we should recommend by any means. If you want to ask city council to forward a recommendation that it be explored among health professionals here, what they would like to do, then I could go with that. So actually, I guess officially, I offer that as an amendment, that we don't, that instead of saying we recommend that city council end fluoridation, I would say that we ask the city council to look into the issue of fluoridation.
This is Scott. Can I interject?
Sure, Scott.
Yeah. So I support the amendment to recommend elimination, and primarily because of the effect for prenatal development. I mean, even in one of the references you gave us, Julian, it acknowledged that there was a cognitive effect from studies on that. Yeah, so for me, it comes down to there is a benefit for teeth if used properly, but there's such a big cost for prenatal development.
I would just say, oh, if I may, just that the effect on, it is true that at higher levels of fluoride, there is a measurable effect upon IQ of children. According to a couple of big analyses that were done recently, but the effect is pretty minimal, actually. It's, you know, a matter of a few points of IQ, and I don't know about you folks, but IQ has had an up and down history, shall I say, as any measure of sort of intelligence.
Yeah, and I'll just also add, Julian, that the CDC doesn't recommend pregnant women drinking fluoridated water. But that's not an option for a lot of people who may be unable to even buy bottled water. I mean, that if you're living on the margins, you know, you're stuck.
Okay, Eric had something?
Just a question for the superintendent. You said roughly 13 gallons of fluoride per day and roughly 4.5 million gallons of water per day.
Correct.
They use a figure of 7 something, and it had to do with the UACPA.
0.7 milligrams per liter.
So that's a recommendation of the.
That's the
EPA?
levels they want to see us keep the fluoride at.
That's the max, right?
You said-
Max, it's 5 to 7. No, it is. It went from 1 to 1.2 to, I believe it's 7
1.
to 0.9, 7 to
It was 1
0.7
part
to
per million, then they lowered it to
it's down to
0.7.
0.7. So 0.7 is their recommended feeding level. But
Parts
there is
per
a slight
million.
range in there. I can go higher than that and still be well within my rights.
Well, it seems to me like this is an educational moment for the general public, because we're talking about the city of Binghamton's water supply. So what is the evidence that this has affected people in the city of Binghamton?
So that's
Because it only
0.7
has to do with the city of Binghamton.
parts per million.
Same thing, you know.
Milligrams per liter parts per million.
So to me, and I would say that I am in favor of Julian's recommendation to the amendment, with the caveat that we add to say that this should be an educable thing, because I think it should be brought up to Mothers and Babies Association here in the city of Binghamton, and these different groups, that these are the people most detrimentally affected by this. And I think they should be educated on the issue, and I think there should be some evidence provided that it has had an adverse effect in this city. I mean, my family's been here for over 100 years.
Okay, where's the evidence that it's had a beneficial effect in this city? Are the dentists going out
My
of
mother,
business?
my mother was 89 years old and she still had her original teeth.
That's called a
Anecdotal.
anecdotal story.
Can I just add to what you just said about
Sure.
the education? Like, I brought this issue up to someone I'm close to, who's been in the managing a program, director of a program for early childhood intervention through a grant program with the city school district here in Binghamton for over 20 years. And it's an issue that they're aware of, because when I brought it up, I got it. So I think that community may have already heard a lot of like arguments similar to what you're presenting today. The question is, can city council and the constituencies that they represent, are they conversant with that? And what are the opportunities we have to like hold the public basically before you jump off the cliff? It's not like operationally, it's really not the issue, and scientifically, it's a toss-up. So it's like, what does the public want to do? Maybe, one way or another. Yeah, Laura?
Yeah, my point, mentioned last time, I do have my master's in public health, that's my background, and we naturally, the field of public health follows CDC guidelines, and it's difficult to go against that. Having heard that from my last meeting, my first one, very hesitant at first, I do understand there are benefits to it. Having done some more research with the scholarly journals, it does seem like there appears to be more evidence going in favor of against it within just this last decade. And so the trend is going where it's more of an issue that's being brought to the public. It's definitely more. New York Times just an article about it just a couple of days ago, actually. It's definitely, I think, increasing in the public mind. And I think it does make sense that we do address it now. If it doesn't get passed, it's now in the history of, look, this has been a thing. We've been talking about it. People have been concerned. I am now in favor of defluoridating the water of Binghamton, even again, having this degree in this past in public health. It looks like the pros, you can't deny them. There are pros. Your mom had the original teeth. Like, it's great for dental teeth. And it feels like it's such an isolated pro and a potentially more broad negative effects that could be just as harmful, more harmful than perhaps decaying teeth. So I think either we go and amend yes or no, or we say, let's hold this and leave it to the city council. I think there's still a good point of moving forward with this to say, look, it's been on at least our minds and we have a history of it being discussed, because I think it's only going to get more controversial as the years go on. I see this in the next decade being a hot topic, maybe even before then.
Another aspect which was made as long ago as 1999 was that the CDC recognized that the main benefit would come from topical application with toothpaste rather than systemic. And I'm just hypothesizing that maybe the reason for that is because you cannot reach an effective systemic level without toxicity. Because you have to keep it at a certain level, and at that level, it's not that much for the teeth beneficial, but if you have toothpaste that you can put on in a much higher concentration, 1 point something, I think it's 1.2, you can check, and then you spit it out. You don't ingest it.
Okay, well,
I have a point of order.
yes,
I offered an amendment.
yes,
The first thing is Richard can accept it or reject it. There's a friendly amendment.
yes.
And if not, we eventually vote on the amendment.
I reject the amendment because I don't want to put health at risk while we deliberate. I think that the evidence is overwhelming.
I'm trying to remember, do we need a second for the motion on the amendment?
Yeah, I just said that we ask city council to have the issue. Eric probably has it down. Ask the city council to look into the issue of fluoridation by water. That's all. And I'm saying ask the city council. I'm saying no, we recommend anything.
No.
Sorry to interject on your procedures and policies, but I support what he's saying simply because, one, it's uncharted territory, and two, there are going to be other entities outside of this, including the Department of Health, that will have a say on this.
Yeah, sure.
I don't know how much of a say they have, but this would give city council a chance to investigate the topic and then find out the proper procedure going forward. so that all our i's and t's are crossed and dotted appropriately. That's what I really see in that, giving us the time, instead of just saying, no, it's over, and telling me to turn off the pump. Because I still need more guidelines than.
Sure, because they have to approve your plan every
Right.
year.
Right.
I'm sure that the city council will deliberate before they vote, as they
And
always do.
The health department was
And-
notified and
But
requested.
you told me that they were gonna keep out of it, right?
Well, until it comes to the point where it's brought to them, they'll keep out of, they're not going to get into the politics of it per se. But they, at some point, they will interject. Because they have to sign off on city's rights. So shall we vote on the amended? Call for a vote? We'll start with her.
What are we voting?
On the amendment, on the amended motion.
Did somebody second it?
Maybe Eric, can you read what you have for the amendment?
Yes, the proposed amendment is for this body to ask city council to look into the matter of fluoridation. I believe those were your words.
And so when you asked Richard if he rejected it, what did that do for this?
He could have accepted it as a friendly amendment and then he would just vote on
Yeah, it goes back
the
to
motion to begin with.
Okay.
We would go back to that.
So
So this way we have to vote on the amendment.
Right.
Then we go back if it passes or fails. We have a second on the amendment. Second by Tom on the amendment. Vote in favor of the amended motion. Eric?
You want to do a roll call? Yeah, that's fine. So Richard,
No.
Darius,
Scott?
I'll abstain.
Tom? Support. Yes. Ashley,
yeah, I guess.
Julie,
Of course, yes.
No,
Luke,
yes.
on the amendment, yes.
I guess, sorry, I'm confused by the process. So if we vote yes, if this passes now, does that mean Richard's original amendment is not existent? It's
Yeah.
dead?
So Ashley, you're voting yes on the amendment,
I'll vote no.
and Luke is yes. And,
Scott abstains.
yep, we got
It's
that.
up to you.
Yes. So 4 in favor, 4 against, 1 abstention.
I think it loses, therefore the amendment loses.
Yeah. So then we'll, does anybody want to second the original motion?
I'll second that.
Second by Darius from the original motion. Do you want him to repeat the motion, Eric, the original motion?
No. I cannot. This is a motion to recommend to city council to discontinue the practice of fluoridation of the water supply. Is that correct? Seconded by Darius. That's now up for discussion, I guess.
I think the discussion's been had.
Okay.
Call for the vote.
Okay. Richard,
Yes.
Darius. Yes. Scott,
Yes,
Luke. Sorry, I'm not going in order. You want me, Tom. Ashley,
Yes.
Julian, no.
Julian. Is no. Laura. Yes. Luke.
No.
No, I'm a no. I've got 5 in favor, 1, 2, 3, 4 opposed.
So motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, next topic. Thanks for your time, John.
No problem.
Thanks
Happy
for
to help.
your input.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Jeff.
Take care. Good to see you.
Take care, John. Let's go back to RL 24-163. A new favorite topic. Gone over this, I mean, my personal take on it,
Is this a zoning matter?
this is the zoning. My personal take on it is, I'm in favor of density. I think there's parts of it that are very good, but I would vote yes to approve this. With the caveat that they take any language that increases density in a flood zone out. And if they reduce any green space, there's any language in there and possibly is reducing green space, that be removed. That's my take. But let's just go around the room and see what everybody else thinks, because I think there's some good benefits to this. And I think there is a housing shortage. And this may in cases help. I think there's lots of parts to it that are not being discussed, with the parking and different things, and it's kind of endless, but I don't see him spending a lot of time and energy on something that we're probably gonna do anyway. And maybe we could get it a little better than it currently is.
At the last meeting, I did not limit my comments on this matter to the environmental effects of the proposed zoning law. And so for that, I apologize. And for today, I have no further comments.
Would you?
Okay, I also, agree with the fact that we need housing, and there are places where it's proper to upzone, which is what this thing would be, but this proposal redefines the classification such that the whole city is upzoned. R1, R2, R3, all of the residential districts are upzoned. And I think that poses a threat to the integrity of certain neighborhoods. It's not a good idea to upzone every area. Some places are very prone to flooding. We're talking, the next meeting coming up is going to be about the climate action plan, where we're concerned about flooding and climate action and the increase in flooding that we expect in the future. We have a pretty bad problem now. To upzone areas that are prone to flooding or that may impact on flooding in other areas is a mistake. It's a mistake. And also to upzone where you don't have adequate transportation, public transportation, and you're asking people to give up their parking spaces. And I come from Queens, where I lived on a private street, but a couple of blocks away, people lived in apartment houses. If they didn't come home from work early enough, they end up having to park on my street 2 blocks away and walk home. So taking away parking spaces from places that are not walkable is a dopey idea. Now, there's something called the walkability score, which gives you a rating for your address. And that could be a rough guide as to where we want to put these. If we combine that with public transportation availability, which is one of the factors that goes into it. How far do you have to walk to get to the nearest bus stop? If you don't have. And also what the flooding conditions would be. And also, finally, walkability, flooding conditions. Those are the 2 big ones, I would say. And in other areas, as has been in the past, people can request, especially for these big public projects, because I know they're looking to get millions of dollars that are available for this. Get a variance, get a special permit. That's the way it's been done. And then you get a hearing. I also believe very strongly that green infrastructure should be incorporated into the zoning proposals. That's something that we should do for the future. We don't have it now. It's left up to city planning's discretion.
That's not 100%.
That's what the mayor told me. He said it's up to the planning commission's
did.
discretion as far as
That's review the law.
green infrastructure.
I'm pretty sure.
Well, you know, so again,
This, this call.
I don't mean to talk out.
Okay,
The green infrastructure. What is, how do you define that?
I define it as all the ways that we use to reduce flooding. I include porous surfaces. I include, actual grass. What do they call these other things here? Wait a second, I'll get the word. Wait. Rain gardens. In the case of where we're increasing the height, we could have maybe rooftop gardens if they're gonna be, have a big footprint for the building, where you're gonna put, you gotta do something to
So,
absorb the water.
so the point I'm just trying to make is that. Where green infrastructure or green space, like Luke and I were talking about that earlier, he said. We should say green space. Well, if it's not a legally defined and adopted term in the zoning law. It's not law.
Right, bioswales is the word I was looking for.
Okay, so
Well, you could put.
You have to
stormwater
look at-
capture for one.
you have to look at the definitions in the zoning law and see if it's there. And if green infrastructure isn't there, then that would be an actionable item for city council. You could say, we want to amend the zoning law and add this definition as part of what they're trying to do. Otherwise, we're just, it's conceptual, but it has no force.
Right.
I sat on the planning commission. I was a chief zoning officer for the city in my position. And if you don't have it in the law, you can't compel somebody to do it. That's state law. That's not local law. So that, I'm just saying as a point of information, everyone, if you want to use that term, you have to also recommend that they find a definition and adopt it.
So what I was thinking of as a suggestion is that instead of redefining all of the zoning classifications, we take these situations, that meet the flooding requirements, they're not gonna impact too heavily. They have green infrastructure to mitigate any problems, and they also are walkable. They have a low walkability index, which the lower the number is, the closer you are to everything. And then take those areas and call them R4 and redefine them as they are. But to take all the R3s, they're scattered in all different places where they shouldn't even be, I think, if you look at the zoning map. And that's why I don't like the idea of just redefining what's there, because it's not in the appropriate place anyway to begin with. And the same thing goes with Griswold Avenue there,
All right.
Griswold Street,
So your comments are noted.
which is flooded, right?
All right.
Yeah,
The one that was,
We're gonna have
spot
to give
zoning.
everybody an opportunity.
Okay, that was in for spot zoning,
Okay.
included in the proposal.
Darius?
Thank you.
I don't have any comments to make at this point.
Oh, Scott. Scott? Still there? Hello, Scott. Okay, we'll move on to Tom.
Sorry, I was muted. Yeah, just quickly, I'm in favor of the idea of increased housing as long as it doesn't increase the risk of flooding. And one other thing, I live in a townhouse, and I think they could maybe do even a little more to accommodate townhouses. My lot's only 16 feet wide, and they're talking about 25-foot width lots, but that's a detail, and a lot of the devil is in the details on this thing. So that's kind of a side point of mine. One last thing too, as far as parking, if there's gonna be more restrictions on parking, the county should step up and provide a better bus service. And I noticed the county's comments, they didn't address that at all. That's the end of my comments. Thanks.
Okay, yeah, a lot of the transportation issues are pretty much to do with the county. Okay, thanks, Scott. Tom?
So, I also feel that the language of the amendment is proposed looks relatively benign to me. And the argument underneath it around hopefully increasing affordable housing is an interesting argument here in the city of Binghamton, because I've never seen a planning or zoning board deny an affordable housing project, which always involves public monies for parking or for stormwater reasons. Like you say, when they've requested variances where they were necessary, they got them. No one's ever voted against in my 10 years of experience. So I don't buy that argument, that that's the purpose of the amendment. Because if it is, it's not gonna happen. And then necessarily, there's other reasons why it doesn't happen, why there isn't more affordable housing that aren't environmental, as Eric pointed out. And the other thing is the parking issue. The parking issue is like a ticking time bomb, because the buildable lots that we have in the city, it's all, even if you buy 2 buildable lots and you want to put more than 4 units on those 2 lots, legacy building lots, you don't have enough room to meet the parking requirements typically. And that's where I did see a lot of like variance requests, a lot of argumentation. This is all independent of the core downtown area, which is a commercial district anyway, so this is in the residential districts. But it's like, if you drive around the west side, the highest density area, R2 and R3 and R1, right now with the students, you see the parking issues, but there's no place to put our off-street parking, even with vacant properties. So this just kind of acts like a magic wand that makes that redevelopment issue go away. You're a redeveloper and you want to make your 3-unit building a 6-unit building. The biggest barrier before was parking, because you needed 1.5 parking spaces to a formula, and you couldn't do it. Now you can just say, I can go higher. I don't have to add any more parking. The only thing stopping me is getting tenants, and then I'm going to get $1,800 a bed or apartment, whatever the numbers are. No, it stops being an environmental issue for them, but it will be for us.
Wait, I thought it was affordable housing.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's what I think is behind it, is that the west side in particular has been built where the transportation routes are the strongest, has been built out to a point that the only way they can go is up, and they can't do it if they have that parking requirement. Because once they open the door to one, they have to open it up pretty much everybody. That's just the process.
Thanks. Ashley?
So in support of the zoning updates, I know my comments were read last meeting, but I'll just summarize them quickly. So in support, but also have some suggestions. I think that the detached ADU should be allowed in R1, in the R1 district also. The ADU should be defined. They're currently 325 square feet in area. I think that's prohibitively small. The maximum should be higher. I'm against all mandatory minimum parking, so I'm supportive of what they put in there. And I agree with the green infrastructure and green space language. There should be some verbiage for that, but to me, this right now is just an update, and it's not a complete zoning overhaul. And in the future, they should look at it more comprehensively. That's it.
So look at what?
The zoning, overall zoning.
Okay,
Julian?
I support it too, with the caveats about floods, green space. And your walkability, except that I think it was Ashley who made the point that, maybe if this comes into effect, that it would actually generate more bus service. Was that true? Was you the one who said that?
Yeah, I thought it was a chicken or the egg issue, and it might push towards.
Yeah, so, I don't know about restricting it to walkability, because you do hope that, well, maybe more bus service. I don't know how many of you remember, but I was a bus taker, so I remember when a former county executive made all the routes 40 minutes instead of 30 minutes. And that decreased the serviceability of the bus service. I sometimes think twice about taking the bus because I realize if I miss it, and you'll all say, well, don't miss it, Shepherd. But if I miss it, I've got a long wait to, for the next one. Anyway, so my view is I support it with those caveats, especially about the flooding. I think the flooding is, we're looking forward to it. You know, you've all seen the
It's
news.
coming. It's
We're
coming.
looking forward to an era where we're almost certainly gonna have some of these big floods again.
All right, I'll keep it kind of brief because I think it's a slightly esoteric and for the sake of time. My main concern is not necessarily with transportation, although yeah, that's a concern. It's actually the bus stops themselves. The houses that have zero parking are for senior housing and affordable housing. So I'm thinking people with children, strollers, elderly people, we don't really want them in, you know, again, it's a warming world. We're talking about floods, naturally that comes with rain, increased snow, lots of heat. And I feel like it just seems a little unfair and short-sighted to propose this, which eventually down the road, you will be having people use the bus service. Hopefully it does generate more of that, but regardless, they have to stand out there waiting for a long time. What if you miss the bus? There's nowhere to sit. There's no cover for rainfall. So my actually main concern with this is really, I don't want these people who will end up living in these spaces who are considered particularly more vulnerable to be stuck in the situation they have no control of when it's seemingly an easy fix. So that's my main concern is actually the bus stops and making those covered, perhaps maybe heating it eventually, maybe not now. I know that's a huge money concern, but the senior housing, affordable housing, they need a better place to wait for the bus. I think it's more realistic if that's going to be the future. So that's my concern.
Thank you. Well, I guess we've heard everyone's comments. Does anyone want to make a motion?
Yeah, I move that we combine all of our comments and forward them to city council.
Sorry, that we, what are, all of them?
Combine all of, pull them
yeah.
all, combine all of our comments together, make a list and forward them to city council. I think we're all on the same page. We may have emphasized different points. But, you know, it doesn't, we were not in disagreement.
Councilman Kavanaugh, would you like to weigh in
About a summation of comments?
about what is city council looking from the commission? What would you appreciate?
I mean, we're sort of new at this process, right? So, I think we intended to hope to get feedback. Whether you want that to be a sort of formal report that is voted on by the commission, or whether you want that to be, you know, summary of comments from individual members, I think that's up to you folks. I don't know if that made it easier or harder.
It pretty much left us where we were
Yeah,
before.
sorry.
That's all right. That's okay. That's how politics works.
Does anybody dispute anything that was said here? If so, we could talk about eliminating it.
no,
Otherwise, just.
I don't think it's a
combine it.
dispute. I think it's just a matter of putting them in a brief summary,
Yeah,
maybe bullet points.
absolutely.
Yeah, I think something that we got stuck on with the cap comments is that we all had to agree on all of them. So I think maybe what you're alluding to, Councilman Kavanaugh, is that we could put our individual comments in there, and then we don't have to, like, I don't have to agree with Luke's or Tom's or something like that, and it's all just individual.
I mean,
Or
so, I mean, if you want to treat it like a Supreme Court decision, there's a decision or a position or a set of positions that the commission kind of agrees on. And then there could be additional comments from individual members.
Yeah, I mean,
Dissents.
I think at some point the commission should vote and say they're in favor of, and then the recommendations, if there's any recommendations for changes. That's my.
Since we have a short meeting today, maybe we should just put them all on a sheet and come back and vote on it. At a, you know, before a month is over, just have a brief meeting in a week or two.
Well, let's say that within the next 2 weeks, let's all put our comments on Basecamp. So they're there in one place. And then the ones that are basically the same, we'll just summarize and then we come back and put it. And city council, I mean, we're gonna send them the comments anyway.
Right, and they will decide for themselves which ones they agree with,
Well, sure.
which ones they don't.
It's unreasonable.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable. I was trying to get away from like the back and forth things, because like if next meeting we have all the comments on there and then someone doesn't agree with this one, and whatever, that's what I was just trying to avoid, but I think that sounds good.
Well, I also just like, you know, I violated that, I like Eric's idea of trying to stay focused on a particular thing you want here. How is this environmentally relevant? Because we know there's other issues that are relevant that are just not our purview. So that I appreciate that.
Well, and that's one of the reasons why I put in here proposing later business, but about a group specific to transportation. So I think that's something we could address in that group. Okay, so moving on, so everybody's gonna put the comments, we're gonna condense them, summarize them. I guess I'm just trying to put the fine points in there and but in the meantime, we'll forward our comments to city council because they certainly should be part of the culture.
Could I make one more comment?
Yes,
Just, is esoteric but relevant. For the last 100 years, the zoning law's principal function is to make the real estate market predictable in order to maintain wealth. Presumably wealth. And the banking industry depends on it, the real estate industry itself depends on it, property owners depend on the body of law to be predictable, basically. It's like, I know what's gonna happen for the next 50 years or 30 years, your 30-year mortgage. I know it's, an R1 is gonna be an R1. And it's not gonna change overnight into something else. I think nationally, there's an awareness now because of what some people call climate change or whatever issue term you wanna use. How can you change zoning law to make it preserving environmental conditions or enhancing environmental conditions in a predictable way, so that that becomes just as important as the money piece of it has been in the past? And it's a really big challenge, and if you read the comprehensive plan, the adopted comprehensive plan update, what, 2012? You know, that discussion was had in public discussion. It's like, how do you change the whole science of zoning law into science of also of environmental preservation? And that's what I think we're really dealing with here, and why it makes it challenging. It's just not something that's been done before.
Yeah.
Zoning law.
right. It's evolving. Okay, next order of business, managed native
Yeah.
gardens task
I've
force.
reached out to Jill and I'm waiting to hear that she can be.
Okay,
And by the way, I heard that it's much more economically feasible if you use native plants for these rain gardens, right?
sure.
For the green infrastructure.
Yeah, don't be one in my backyard, but that's what I was told as well.
Okay, now discussion items 4 through 11. That we initially put in and removed from the CAP GHG goals and summary. I think there was a list that Julian put together, Ashley commented on, everybody I think commented on at different points, so we removed some of them, but I think they're important to this group. Just not in the context of the CAP and the GHG inventory, so, I mean, out of those, personally, I was thinking that Ashley's comments about, I think it was Ashley, and maybe it was the director of planning, possibly this group taking over the advisory part of the CAP and GHG, whereas they currently have a handful of people that meet every quarter century or so. So I would be in favor of that. If, I think it's up to the mayor, right? In the planning department, but I would recommend to, if everybody's in agreement, that would be a good idea. That we at least, even if they keep them, if we supplement them or if we were added to the group. So that as they develop these plans going forward, we would be involved in input
Yeah, I think
questions.
the group that was identified, that was just for that one time plan, so I don't think they're continuing in any capacity going forward. But as I kind of alluded to previously, the climate action plan, the greenhouse gas inventory was completed for the Climate Smart Communities program. And so with that, there is a task force that is recognized by city council and the mayor. And so that's what I think we should become, is the Climate Smart Communities task force. But also involving Dr. Burling in it too, because she's right now the coordinator of that.
Yes.
But basically it's a program, and we're already certified bronze, the city of Binghamton, but you want to keep that certification and can also pursue silver. So we would help identify actions that we want to see, work with Dr. Burling to, maybe get funding for some of them. And I think a lot of like things that were identified by this group were more tailored to other plans, like a climate adaptation plan. And so that's something in this program that we can look to for our resiliency work.
I think that's a great idea. And I think if we could help get a position funded through grants for like a sustainable planner for the city, I think that would be a worthy cause. And somebody who could interact with them and assist in developing an actual program, actionable program. Might be really beneficial. And there's Shade Tree Commission, there's several groups that you could bring all together into one. If you have someone that was actually their job, coordinating all these efforts, you wouldn't have the redundancies and maybe be able to put things in place.
So there was a
functional
plan.
There was
Really,
the first
yeah.
climate action plan,
Yeah.
there was a sustainable plan.
So it's like restore that position.
Yes.
Still a priority.
Yes,
Yeah. But I think you could do it for that, for the next time.
it would be a worthy goal, I think, to pursue that.
You want to put that into a motion and vote?
I think we'll have to tighten that up a little bit before we put it into the next year. Oh. Broaden the membership of the planning commission.
Yeah, let me just say something about that. I reread the climate action plan, and somewhere I swear I saw a proposal for who would compose a citizens committee, or I should say a joint sort of administration citizens committee for the implementation of the climate action plan. I couldn't find that again, but what I do remember is that it was something like 40% city employees, 40% from something. I'm afraid I've forgotten the name of it, but it was a commercial name, and almost no sort of general citizen input. And in any case, as I say, I couldn't find it again, but I would recommend that there be an implementation group. And that was in the original climate action plan, an implementation group with broad representation.
Well, that's gonna take further development.
Thank you, Dennis. Thanks.
So a lot of these topics that were in the other comments are kind of overlapping. So I think it's a matter of committees being formed specifically to different topics, but that one, I don't see how they can really move forward with much by naming the city planner, who already has a gutted department. To put them in charge, regardless of whoever it is, how can they perform those functions? They really can't. It's an impossibility. And it's obvious that it's not a priority. So, I mean, which, then it's political. It's just basically, it's either a priority or it isn't. If you're gonna make it a priority, you gotta fund it, you gotta have somebody that has the position. So hopefully that's something that can happen going down the road, because I don't see how anything gets implemented without somebody being actually full time in charge of that. They can say Dr. Broome is in charge of it, so, but she doesn't have any tools, she doesn't have, people she needs to perform. And when there's no, in the other departments, and answer the question. So unless you have a plan in place that says this department be responsible for collecting this data, for doing this, for doing this. It isn't that.
So that's a good point, because the budget's been in discussion for next year.
Yeah.
And I think one thing that outside advisory groups like ours might not be cognizant of is that we're trying to address problems like in real time in this room. Not necessarily appreciating that no matter what decisions we make, the budget's already been established for next year. So you may come up with a good programming idea, or you may come up with a good staffing idea, or you may come up with a good procedure or process idea. But if the budget hasn't already been created for that, it's really a year away before you can even take the first step.
But
Because the
they're
first step is,
constantly shifting things around too during the year, right?
well, they can and they do move things around, but it's not like all the Lego blocks are yellow and you're just taking this yellow block and putting it over here. You know the budget better than anyone. It's like, some of them are red blocks. You can't move those red blocks. Some of them are blue blocks. They can be used for anything. Sometimes you change a blue block to a yellow block, but that's all procedural. It's not.
Well, this commission does have the authority to seek the grant.
Yeah, well, that's a
And
different
and we can look to work with city council and the mayor's office, regardless, and seek a grant to fund the sustainability.
I would be wildly excited if you folks for grants. That we should support. There's only so much bandwidth in City Hall to pursue and write grants, and they're focused on often what the administration wants to focus on, what their departments focusing on. So to take hold of initiative and find a grant match, that would be awesome. And to Tom's point about the different codings of different sort of spending, there's very little to actually move around when you get down to the brass tacks.
Sounds like we're onto something.
So talking about funding personnel, there's very few grants that will like fund a person's job. You'd have to work their job into a larger grant. So you could, if you're doing a plan, you could pay that person's salary for the plan, but it wouldn't go beyond that plan. So it's kind of, it's not directly supporting the position. So you have to think about other things you want to do. Want that for them to support. Really.
Yeah, it's not a permanent position.
And it would have to be for a larger task, like if you're doing a climate adaptation plan, you can fund us as like a planner in that. But you can't just be like, oh, we want a planner, you know.
That's just, I use rough English, but I know what has to be done.
But you make a great point, because maybe we could reserve time in a future meeting when we have nothing else to do. That you could share. Or maybe we bring in someone from outside as well to just talk about the pitfalls of grants. as a funding resource, because grants are typically set up, like you said, to like, to get the ball rolling.
Sure.
But it's not like a permanent condition. And usually there's a prohibition around that.
Yeah.
So it's like. Not always clear to the public when that happens. They just hear.
Yeah, it's, I mean, you have to almost simultaneously be finding a candidate. Take on this position that's willing to do something in that, and then look for a way to fund it, and somebody will do the job.
Well, you need to do that, but more importantly, you need to say, how's this affects the tax rate or the basic revenue sources the city has?
Yeah, you
What
wanna-
are you gonna give up to get it? Because it's like a zero-sum game that we're taught. We can't increase it even if we want to.
no, you gotta be next year.
So it's like, you gotta identify what you're gonna take away before you can suggest what needs to be added. That's the reality of it. That's why these departments are empty.
Well, it's like FEMA, you can get people consultants to pay for, to do FEMA projects and then FEMA will pay them. So.
Yeah.
You do it on the Senate, anyways.
But so
Something-
put that on the agenda for the future?
Yes, we'll put that on the agenda for next month's meeting. Further discussion. About grant funding and opportunities for the large.
I said, do I have to make a motion to do that?
Consider it done. On the agenda. We got 3 minutes left. Let's see. Let's. We'll keep going on the topic on the different things. I did speak with the president of the New York State Association of Conservation Commission's membership. And we are in that now. Some, as I mentioned last month, he did cash my check, so I contacted him to make sure that we're part of that. So that does afford us a voting member to the EMC, Broome County Environmental Management Council. So we could pick someone from this commission. I think, Ashley, are you already on the?
I just go to the meetings, I'm not a voting member,
But you do
but I
already.
go out with them, so I would be happy to be that person who wants to go there and vote.
I have a question. Could we put in a request at this point in the budget for these membership fees and things for next year?
I did ask Kadasa to do that. I don't know if she did. I'm still here, I'll figure this out later. If they don't. Hopefully they do.
Just start charging them for the cookies. You didn't hear that, right?
What's that? Okay, anybody, I will make a motion, or no, somebody else make a motion, and actually be the person for the EMC revenue member.
I make a motion.
I'll make a motion, second. All in favor? Aye. Done, now you're a voting member. Okay, new committee proposal. I would like to propose a transportation committee. To talk about all things transportation. Walkable, bikeable, Green County. It's a miserable transit system. I'm getting involved more with BMTS. I have been going to some of the 2 degrees meetings, transportation. They missed the one, it's at a time, it's this week. But they're looking at mostly a broad picture, like from Owego to Whitney Point to surrounding communities. Transportation, food deserts and things like that, which it's all part of it. It's a pretty big issue. I recommend everybody watch City Nerd on YouTube.
Watch what?
City Nerd
City Nerd.
on YouTube. He was engineer or a plan engineer. He's a transportation engineer and planner. And he travels around to all cities, mostly bigger cities in the United States and all over the world, and moves from city to city every year. He talks about transportation density, all these issues, and he backs it up with mind-boggling amounts of data that he collects. I mean, it's a genuine nerd, but very informative and very interesting.
I like the idea. And I actually am a member of a university committee on transportation. That might be a useful liaison.
So, maybe you could be the one that starts the SAC with the university. What's that? Students Against Cars. Because one thing I brought up, and there was a transportation person there from the university at that meeting. And I said, why does the college, the university continually promote cars and more parking, and more parking, and more parking? They just spent $25 million to make a bathroom downtown to be here, to get people run over at the corner of Murray and Vesta Park. It's like, how did you not cross the street for $25 million? That's, okay. It's like, why at least put a path across where the old NICEAG property runs. It goes to the crosswalk, it goes to the bridge, it goes to the East Jump.
Right.
So I guess we better vote on this. I think we only have 1 minute left.
I believe that the chairman can
Right.
form the committee without a vote of this commission.
I like that authority. Okay, that's great. Okay, we have a transportation committee,
And Julian's gonna be the chair.
and I will be on that. Whoever wants to be chair can be chair. And we could vote on it once the committee's formed.
Yeah.
Anybody interested in being on the committee? Transportation committee? Julie, Ashley, and I. Hey, there's 3 of us. That's good to me.
I have a fun question for your first agenda.
Okay,
Is it imaginable, Julian, you might be able to research this because in your capacity? Could the city withdraw from the county transportation agreement and partner with OCC Transport?
Interesting.
Because I think they're way better at managing transportation than Broome County is. And Broome County has constituencies that work against the city you know, it wasn't always Broome County, like, I'm old enough to remember when it wasn't. You are too.
Yeah.
Well, but I just thought, like, that's a pretty wild idea, right?
Yeah.
And also, one other question, why can't civilians ride on the OCC buses anymore?
I don't know what the rules are now. It used to be faculty could ride on it, but they can now, so I don't know what the it's probably liability issues. But,
I think with the faculty, there's too much Me Too going on.
yeah. OCC Transport is a remarkable phenomenon.
And those folks old enough to remember, when Binghamton ran its own transit system, did the line stop at the city line or did they go beyond?
You
city
used to
line?
be able to take the trolley before my time. You used to be able to take the trolleys to Buster, I know that.
You used to be able to take light rail to
Because
Lyons.
my mother grew up downtown, she used to take the trolley to their summer house in Buster. In the river.
Which is not so far.
Motion to adjourn.
Second. All in favor?
Say no, gonna get thrown out anyway.
Thanks for everybody's input and everybody.
Those were a bunch of issues.
What's it on?
Good issues.
75 minutes. Did it all in 75 minutes.
Yeah. Well, don't mean to be abrupt, but sometimes. But hopefully by January, when we have a new chair for this commission, we will have a formalized process for how we do things and how to get it over to city council.
Yeah.
We will formalize in the meantime. Still, we're trying to evolve this so that it works. We'll see. Well,
Being on this.
I'm planning on being in Seattle at least probably 3 or 4 months. Yeah, so.
Early in the year.
I hope to be traveling most of the year.
Mild in winters.
Well, I gotta go babysit in springtime for a few months, at least 2 or 3 months. Oh, yeah, definitely my winters. I was working outdoors last year in a t-shirt in January, part of the time. Thanks for your patience, Ashley. It's appreciated. Thank you, Jen.
Yes.
Yeah. I did read through the one study, the first half, until my eyeballs fell out of my head. Yeah, where I was, I think, at 3 o'clock in the morning in a hotel in Madrid.
Whoa.
It was pretty exhausting.
What were you doing in Madrid?
We stopped there, we went to. Where we go? Went to Portugal.
You guys are welcome to continue this conversation in the corridor there. We got some folks waiting to go.
Hey, oh, we do.
We went to Cordoba and rode bicycles to Granada.
Just 12 minutes. So is that yourself?
Yeah. I guess.
Yeah, you get acknowledged by the chair. Otherwise, you're just listening. Ready? Okay.
I'm gonna listen to it.
Where are we sitting?